you guys. How are you? I thought I was taping, but I guess I wasn't. So, anyway, I am on my way to work, and I missed a day of posting because I got busy. I was running my mouth on the phone, and at this time I only have one phone, so. But I'm gonna be taping today just for a while, not for like 30-35 minutes, because it takes a little too long to download it. So I'm just gonna post for like a minute, and there we have our construction work. But anyway, I think where I left off was when I ran to Bakersfield trying to understand what was happening, and I ended up in a townhouse on Real Road. And trust me, jeez Louise. So the last time I spoke with you guys, I was talking about my targeting experience from whence I began to first understand what was going on. That's when I first started to understand what was going on. And how I just started running because I thought it was some kind of a sex cult of rich people, which, you know, we do know that a lot of them are involved. A lot of Hollywood is involved. Very powerful people. And we know that this could be trafficking. I'll just put it that way. A lot of it is trafficking because of the amount of stalkers that they use to harass us, and the directed energy, and how they attack our private parts and things like that. But I ended up on Real Road after leaving my house in Ridgecrest, and it is because at my house in Ridgecrest, they were coming on the property. They were harassing my dog. I had 2 dogs at the time. They were looking through my windows, attempting to, in my walls. I even heard a phone ring in my walls. So, like I said, I had one of those old-fashioned heaters, and it stuck out of the wall. The heater stuck out of the wall, and so I could hear talking in the wall. I could hear they had some kind of they had dug some kind of a hole, and had access to my house, which happens to a lot of single women. I've heard quite a few single women talk about them having access to your house. And so I took off to Bakersfield. My plan anyway was to stay in that house only for like 6 months to a year, and then rent it out. So that was my plan anyway. So I just kind of like left a little bit early. So I left, and I rented out well, first I was in the Airbnbs, and they followed me around everywhere I went because they had access to my phone. So I was in the Airbnbs, and then I decided I was going to move into an apartment, because every time I try to buy another house, there would be something wrong with the loan. The people were not able to get their end of the loan, and it happened twice. It went 1, 2, yeah, actually it happened 3 times. It went through 3 loan companies. I was trying to buy a townhouse out there. It's really nice, but the people that were selling it, somehow that there was something wrong with the writing on their end of the loan. But that's when I started to suspect something anyway. Like, this is weird, like something is going on. But I didn't say anything at the time. I was just like, my antennas were up. Like, what is this? You know, this blocking going on. You know how you can feel something spiritually that's wrong? You can feel it. And so I started to feel, you know, this was a lot bigger than just the gang stalking and all of that. Like, there's something a lot bigger. But then I ended up on Real Road in a townhouse. It wasn't the best neighborhood though. It was not. And I didn't know anything about Bakersfield. I was just there, believe it or not, by myself. Me and my dog. Just exploring. And I ended up over there. I stayed there 3 months, but the targeting was so bad. It was a small apartment building, but the townhouses were actually nice. They were old compared to like most townhouses, but they were big and nice and had a front door and a back door. I really liked how they were made. And the rent was in my, you know, I could afford the rent. The rent was really, really good. But unfortunately, the people were awful. You know, I walk outside and my neighbor is like siphoning the energy out of my electric vehicle. They had access. There were cameras all around that apartment. Because I felt like the neighbors could see what I was doing. I would walk outside to take my trash out, and the kids knew my name. They would call me by name. Yeah. People I had never seen before, never met before. Call me by name, and then start giggling. So I was like, oh, no. I got to get out of here. Yeah, I got to get out of here. And that was my thinking at the time. Thinking back is like kind of stupid. Like, you know, just stand your ground. Stay where you're at. Who gives a flying fudge what those people think? But at the time, I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't even know. I had never even heard of gang stalking, covert surveillance. I didn't know that the government was doing things like that to their people. I had no idea. No idea. So, I left that place. The guy that rented it to me was so nice, and I was like, "Look, I have to get out of here. I have to go. The neighbors are harassing me. Blah 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 blah." And he didn't understand. He was like really confused, and I felt bad for him. But I was like, "Well, it is what it is. I gotta go. And so he let me out of my lease, and I got the heck up out of there. Like I said, I met a lady who was housekeeping, and she was giving a majority of her money to underprivileged people in her own hometown, trying to send them to college, which I thought was commendable. And she was like some kind of a regional CEO of Home Depot, so it wasn't like she needed the money, but I don't know, something was going on with her. Won't get into it. Maybe she did need the money because of what she was doing with the money. But anyway, she was really nice, and I was telling her my issue because she would come over weekly because that's how big the townhouse was. Like, I was trying to unpack, and she would come over and help me clean, and she was a really good cleaner too. She cleaned really good. But yeah, she told me, well, you have the money. It's not like you don't have the money, because I had the money in my bank account, stuff like that. So she was like, well, I'll help you find a place where you want to live, and I'll vouch for you, and I'll help you get the place and write up your employment and all of that stuff. So I found these luxury apartments in Bakersfield, and the majority of these people, maybe I saw like one biracial person there and one black person, and then I was the other black person. And then what so happened is they put me in the back. So they put me in the back, all the way in the back of the apartments. And so I was like, okay, what is this about? Because I was supposed to go to another apartment. supposed to go to another apartment. That's the apartment I was supposed to be in, but all of a sudden, right before I moved in, they told me, oh, well, we have to switch your apartments. So they put me literally in the back, like all the way in the back. And I think that they did that because they were a part of what was going on. So, I was like, okay, I didn't like it, but there was nothing I could do about it. I had to move. You know how when you're on a timeline, you have to get up out of there. So I moved in, and immediately it started happening again. Like immediately, the harassment, all of that stuff started happening. I could tell that people were like in and out of my apartment. My goal there, and I've always been driven. I've always had goals. I've always had plans to do things and figure that out. Probably the only one in my family that driven. I think my younger sister, who's a LMFT, got a little bit of that from me. But I'm just like, look, we've been poor all of our lives. I'm going to figure out this plan. I'm going to create a transportation company. And I'm going to do everything related to transportation. Whether it's Uber Eats, whether I get personal accounts, whether it is Walmart Spark, and that's how I'm going to make my money. So I started doing that for a while, and I made pretty good money. I did. In the beginning, I made pretty good money. Unfortunately, it didn't last because my phone began to be attacked, and it would just literally go black. I would be out on an order, and it would just literally go dark. I wouldn't be able to see the address or anything. Just completely go dark. Which would, of course, slow me down. Which would, of course, I would have to call in. I would have to reboot my phone, call in sometimes because everything would just completely disappear. Get the information. I would have food in my car. I would have groceries in my car. And, yeah, I had to deal with that a lot. So I went from making pretty good money, $800 a week, doing the Uber Eats and Walmart Spark and the other apps, to making almost nothing. So what happens is they slowly drain your account. They slowly financially drain you. You don't even know it because at that time, you're still trying to figure out what the heck is going on. You just think it's bad luck, but it's not. It's the government. it's what they're doing to you. You're in the program. You're being targeted. So I dealt with that for months and months and months and months and months until I used all of my savings up, and I was no longer able to make money the way I needed to. My phone, I could see the orders pop up on my phone, and then they would disappear. Like within not even a second, they would disappear. I couldn't even take a screenshot of it. That's how quickly they would take the orders away from me. $30 orders, $40 orders, $50 orders. And so I would literally be out all day and all night and would make hardly anything. Like 100, 120, 130. So I went from making $8 or $9 or $1,000 a week, and I would work three days and I would be off, or either I would work 4 days and I would be off. So I would go from making that much money to making barely $300 the 3 days that I would be out, 4 days, and I mean barely. So of course, what's going to happen? You're not going to be able to pay your rent. You spend the majority of the money that you made selling your house. You spent that 6 months before living in Airbnbs, trying to wait on your purchases, trying to purchase, this and that, and trying to study the city. So the plan that I had wasn't a really good plan because I did not know that they were financially draining me. They were, and it was done on purpose. So, basically I got an eviction. I was evicted, but I left before the eviction, which is a little bit better. So it turned into a judgment, and I was like, forget all of this, forget it. I was talking to my son's not foster parent, but behavioral parent at the time, support parent is what they called him, because where am I at? 30? Okay, I'm almost there. We had become real close. I told him what was going on, so I did let some people know what's going on, and he had actually knew about it, because he felt like at one time that he was also being gang stalked. He said that he has a relative that works for the FBI or does something there. I don't know if it's clerical, I don't know if they are FBI, but he called his relative, and they explained what the gang stalking was, and they told him, yeah, it's real. So he was like, well, Teresa, why don't you come and stay with us, because my son has always, my adopted son, he's just like my biological child. I've had him since he was like 4.5, but he has always had struggles with behaviors, always. His family, his bio family that he comes from is just awful, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But Connor was giving him a really, really hard time. So he was like, well, why don't... He was a gay man, too. He was from the LGBT community. And he was like, well, just come and stay with us. And so we could, like, raise them together. Maybe we can move to another state. Maybe it'll stop. You know, he was, like, really down with me. And so I went there to stay with him to try to gain my bearings. Out of money, broke. Like I said, I spent all of my money trying to purchase the townhouse and then Airbnbs, waiting on documents and waiting on just stalling. Basically, they stall you out. So about 3 days staying there, we were having the best time. Oh my gosh, it was so fun. We were having the best time. Unfortunately, the weird stuff started happening again. It was a rental house. It was a big, pretty rental house. But his landlord contacted him and was like, is there someone living in the house other than you? And he was like, well, yeah, I have a friend that's staying. The house was huge. It was like, I can't, let me see, it was 1, 2, Connor had his room, I had my room. It was at least 4 to 5 bedrooms. It was upstairs, downstairs. So you can see that there was not an issue. There was not supposed to be an issue. It was a huge house, but that's a part of the targeting. So the landlord had been contacted, and the landlord did not want me in the house because of the targeting. And so I had to leave. And I think after that situation, because he had a lot of, like, John had a lot of intuition. Like, he was very, very sensitive. Like, he would notice stuff. And so I think that he got really, really nervous. And one night when I went out to do my Uber Eats to try to make some money, something happened. I guess the landlord had called him again, told him, oh, I'm going to stop by or something. He got really nervous, and I went back. I told him I would be back around 2 or 3, and he was like, okay, well, just call me and let me know. I'll let you in. And basically, I finished with my Uber Eats with what little money I could make, and got back to the house. He texted me, and he told me he wasn't going to let me in. So he told me that I was going to have to find somewhere else to stay. And I was like, okay, well, can you just let me get my things? I need to get my things, because I had things there, you know. I had the room and all of that stuff, but he would not even allow me to get my things. So that put like a damper on the relationship, because that had really, really, really pissed me off. Like, come on, dude, just let me get my stuff, and I will be on my way. I'm grateful that you're taking care of Connor. I know that he's a handful and that he's hard to take care of, but I appreciate everything that you're doing for me. And I still did. I was still very appreciative. But, he would not let me back in at all. And so I just took off. Me and my dog, we just took off. And before I had left, initially when I met him, he was like, "You should go to Valley Oasis." And I was like, "What is that? I never heard of that." And he told me it's a place that helps people, I guess, displaced people get homes and rooms and things like that. And so that's the next thing that happened with me. I decided to live in my car for like 3 or 4 days. I thought, I'll just sleep in my car. A lot of people do it. A lot of people do it. So that's what I'll do. I'll just sleep in my car, me and my dog. Unfortunately, it was the winter time. And that did not work. It was freezing cold. And I didn't want to get sick. I didn't want my dog to get sick. So I found this shelter. And it's a really, really good shelter. And that shelter was like the most, I don't want to say amazing, but I had such an amazing, it sounds so weird when I say it, but I had such an amazing time at that shelter. I made a lot of friends. Like, I made a lot of friends, and there was a lot of people there that I felt were targeted. And I truly did feel that they were targeted. And we just bonded. There was a lot of women there, a lot of women that had experienced trauma. There was also a lot of harassment there by some of the staff. Mostly, I noticed that they choose men that have issues with women, that hate their moms. Because in order for you to do something like this to a woman, to harass, to join that program, you have to have, either you have to be racial, like you have to be racist and just not care, or you have to have issues. You have to have a lot of issues. And so this is where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to talk about the shelter next, and how they thought it was going to be my downfall, but the shelter was actually the best thing that had ever happened to me. So I'm going to pick up on this tomorrow when I have a chance, and I'm going to bring this story all the way up from the targeting that I was experiencing back then, about 5 years back, all the way up to me being clear right now. So we will talk soon.